The NFL season is literally here, and if you're like us, you're probably gearing up to draft your fantasy football teams. So here are the top 10 quarterbacks that are probably going highest at your fantasy drafts and should just overall have super productive years. Now, there's absolutely no doubt that Patrick Mahomes is the face of the NFL. Over the past 5 seasons, Mahomes has simply dominated. Since 2018, he's thrown for 2,400 yards and 200 touchdowns, and in the regular season, he's led the Chiefs to a 63-16 record. He's a 2-time MVP, 5-time Pro Bowler, and so much more. The Chiefs have literally put him in the perfect situation to succeed, and he's ran with it. The offensive line has lost a few key players over the past couple seasons, but they're still probably going to be a top 5 line in the league. He has Travis Kelce, who is a top tight end of all time. His running backs are young, but they always seem to produce in that offensive scheme. And even after Tyreek Hill went to Miami, they didn't even miss a step in the passing game. They didn't have an amazing receiving core, but still they picked up the slack. Patrick Mahomes is just so good that he can make anything work. But honestly, past Mahomes, you know he's going to get it done again because of also the coaching staff. Andy Reid has proved to be one of the best coaches of our generation, and Matt Nagy is returning an offensive coordinator. So of course, Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs look as scary as they have for the past few years. For the past 3 years, though, Josh Allen has also just been one of the most talented players at the position. He's been super consistent. He's thrown about 13,000 yards, 100 touchdowns. He can get it done on the ground too, though, and that's what makes him so valuable, especially in fantasy. Last season, he rushed for over 700 yards and 7 touchdowns. He's only been a Pro Bowler twice and has been a second-team All-Pro once, but he's also finished top 3 in MVP voting twice now. Fortunately for Allen, he is a really reliable number 1 in Stephon Diggs. Then past Diggs, the Bills also have Gabe Davis, who had a solid season last year, and then they should have 2 really good tight ends, Dawson Knox, and they just drafted Dalton Kincaid. Stephon Diggs really is the only stud on that offense, but they should have a good passing game and a good rushing game. James Cook is back, and the Bills also did just sign Davian Harris. But really, Josh Allen's biggest strength is his health. Over the last 4 seasons, he's just missed 1 game. Going into last season, the clear best 2 quarterbacks in football really were Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen. But this season, it might look a little different in the top 5. And one of the biggest breakout stars last year was Jalen Hurts. In just his 3rd season, Hurts threw for 3,700 yards and 22 touchdowns to only 6 interceptions. Plus, he rushed for 760 yards and 13 touchdowns. He was not just named a second-team All-Pro, but also finished 2nd in MVP voting behind Patrick Mahomes. Now, many people questioned his performance of whether or not it was him or the team that was surrounding him, because that Eagles team really good. But if you're looking to draft him in fantasy, then you absolutely should, because the offense looks almost the exact same aside from the loss of Miles Sanders. Hurts is still going to be running the ball a lot, and he's still going to be passing a lot behind one of the, if not the best offensive line in the league. He basically has 2 number 1 caliber receivers in A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith, along with Dallas Goedert, and a very scary defense on the other side. There's no wonder why the Eagles made it to the Super Bowl last year. If everything stays the same, honestly, we could see Hurts have another MVP caliber season. Now, despite all that, somehow Hurts isn't even the best quarterback going into his 4th season. Now, remember way back, Joe Burrow had a really promising rookie season, but it ended early because he tore his ACL in week 10. And even then, the Bengals were still struggling. They went just 2-7-1 in the games he started, but then he snapped out of that real quick. He had a great 2021, 1 comeback player of the year, and of course, the Bengals made it all the way to the Super Bowl. Then this past season, he threw for 4,475 yards and 35 touchdowns to just 12 interceptions. He was named an All-Pro, he was named a Pro Bowler, and finished 4th in MVP voting. Now, a big issue for Burrow has been his line. They recently have gotten better, but they still could use some work. But his receivers are simply incredible. Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, and Tyler Boyd make up the best receiving core in the league. Over the past 2 seasons, Joe Burrow has proven that he is one of the best quarterbacks in the league, and I expect nothing but another great season from him this year. Back in 2019, Lamar Jackson became the 2nd unanimous MVP in NFL history at only 22 years old. He has still shown great things in the past few seasons, but he's really just had trouble staying healthy. He's missed 10 games over the past 2 years. In that time, he's thrown for 5,124 yards, 30 touchdowns, and 20 interceptions, but where most of his value comes is on the ground. And on the ground, he's run for 1,500 2,500 yards and 5 touchdowns. He does have a great line, which should present a good amount of sacks, but with Lamar's play style, he is bound to get hurt again. His receivers are kind of questionable. Like, Odell Beckham Jr. was once really good, but is he washed, or does he still have a lot left in the tank? Zay Flowers has a lot of promise, and they just took him in the first round, but how much is he going to do as a rookie? And that's going to be one of the big questions. If you take a chance on Lamar in fantasy, it could be the best player on your team, but the chances are he won't stay healthy, and you might end up scrambling at some point to find a good backup. Now, sticking with those mobile guys, if you're able to pick up Justin Fields in fantasy, it could pay off big time. Fields has shown a lot of promise, but he does obviously still have a lot of developing to do, especially in the passing game. Last year, he had 2,200 yards and 17 touchdowns to 11 interceptions, but on the ground, he had 1,100 rushing yards and 8 touchdowns. Now, he finally has somebody good to throw the ball to after the Bears traded for DJ Moore from the Panthers. Chicago's offense is pretty bad other than those two, but Luke Getsy is going into his second year as the offensive coordinator, and prior to that, he spent 7 years working with the Packers and Aaron Rodgers. There are a lot of things that are going to hold Justin Fields back, but especially with his rushing ability and an improved Bears team, he could be a huge piece on any fantasy team. Since 2020, Justin Herbert has shown that he is one of the most talented quarterbacks in the league. Over the last 2 years, he's thrown 63 touchdowns to 25 interceptions. Plus, he was named to his first and only Pro Bowl so far in 2021. But you have to wonder if his career is going to end up a little bit like Phillip Rivers' did. He might have really good talent around him, but is it actually enough to make a serious run in the playoffs? The Chargers receiving core has some big names, and it's just going to matter now how they actually turn out. Keenan Allen, well, his best years are probably behind him. Mike Williams has been really, really good, but one of the new pieces that should make a big impact is Quentin Johnson, who has a ton of upside, but is young and might be pretty raw coming out of TCU. Plus, Austin Eckler should catch a good amount of passes out of the backfield next season, and he's really been a touchdown machine as of late. But more than anything, if you want a single reason why the Chargers offense is going to be better, it's because Joe Lombardi's gone and they hired Kellen Moore. It should be a super pass-heavy offense, and I think it's really going to benefit Herbert, especially on the stat sheet. He was good last season and should be even better this year. Now, if there's anybody that kind of came out of nowhere last year, it was Trevor Lawrence, who also with the Jags did a complete 180. In 2021, Jacksonville went 3-14 with Urban Meyer, and last year they went 9-8. And a lot of that probably has to do with Doug Peterson, but it's not all just about the team. The transformation of that entire offense has been crazy, and Trevor Lawrence was a massive part of that. He made his first Pro Bowl and threw for 4,100 yards and 25 touchdowns to 8 interceptions. The Jags really did go all out and try to build around Lawrence, and it paid off big. They signed Christian Kirk, they signed Zay Jones, and they signed Evan Ingram, and now with the addition of Calvin Ridley too, Jacksonville's offense should be even better. Not to mention, he's consistently stayed healthy. Since his freshman year at Clemson, he's only missed 2 games. He's still young, but now he has even better talent around him, and now he has more time to get comfortable in his 3rd season in the league. Last year, Aaron Rodgers had quite a down season. He threw for 3,700 yards and 26 touchdowns, and also had 12 interceptions, which is actually the most he's thrown in a season since 2008, and that's still not a lot, but you have to remember that the 2 years before that, he won the MVP back-to-back. This offseason, Rodgers did get traded to the Jets, and that might just be the big change he needs. They have some young guys like Breece Hall and Garrett Wilson, and there's already a lot of expectations on this team, and Rodgers did bring over some of his guys that he already has that rapport with, like Allen Lazard and Randall Cobb, who both played with him in Green Bay. But maybe the biggest Packer connection that Rodgers now has in New York is offensive coordinator Nathaniel Hackett. Now, Hackett struggled a lot as the head coach for the Broncos last year, but before that, he was an incredible OC with the Packers and was the OC when Rodgers won those 2 MVPs. The real question now is this going to be another year towards regression for Aaron Rodgers, or could it be a bounce back year? Either way, even a disappointing Aaron Rodgers is still really good. Now, probably the most polarizing guy on this list is Dak Prescott, who I'm not quite sure if you should really target or avoid. And it probably depends on where he ends up going in your draft. draft and what round you're in. I get the hype around him, but last year was really rough. He threw for 2,800 yards and 23 touchdowns, and despite missing 5 games, he still led the league with 15 interceptions. Now, one of the big upsides, though, is he has a good roster around him. Dallas's defense is amazing, and then he has a really good supporting cast on offense. He has a top 10 offensive line, a really promising running back in Tony Pollard, CeeDee Lamb, who's maybe right outside that top 10 wide receivers in the league, and they just brought in Brandon Cooks as well. Plus, this offseason, the Cowboys replaced Kellen Moore with Brian Schottenheimer, so there should be a pretty decent change there in the offensive scheme. It's really hard to know what exactly to expect from Dak Prescott. Is he going to have that bounce back year or not? For Dak Prescott, it really might end up being a big prove-it year. He's probably going to get an extension soon from Dallas just for salary cap reasons, but he really is going to have a good season because the Cowboys have put everything around him to be perfect. These are really just the quarterbacks that are in the best spots to succeed this season and or have already shown in the past that they can be productive. Quarterback really isn't that important in fantasy football, but if you can get one of these guys, you should feel pretty good.